the sayings of the Prophet Muhammad, so that we learn to understand how to worship God through his book and through his sunnah, which is also explained to us by those who are most knowledgeable in that. So we don't believe that there's some sort of individual inspiration from the Holy Spirit, but of course we believe the angels will support the believers, will feel like believing in. Okay? So this is the major differences between us and the Jews. But otherwise, again, we have lots of similarities as well.
Can you say
let me give you this.
How do you prove that the Quran hasn't been changed over 1,000 years?
Can I prove? I think you've been listening to Mr. Smith down there. Huh? Now, can I prove that the Quran has not been changed over 1,400 years? I can, inshallah. Now, it doesn't take too long, inshallah. Now, first of all, I have with me here a copy. I have here a copy, a facsimile of a passage taken out of a book. This book is in Tashkent, which is in Bukhara in Russia, well, what used to be the Soviet Union. Now, contrary to what the Christian man down there, Mr. Smith, says, he says that this is written in the Kufi script. And the Kufi script, he claims, came from Kufa in Iraq. And he says, therefore, because this Quran was written down before the Muslims were in Kufa in Iraq, therefore, that shows that what you're saying is not true. This can't be the original Quranic manuscript that you're claiming. However, experts in the Arabic, and by the way, these are non-Muslim experts. One of these experts is a woman called Nadia Abbott. She's American. She's written 3 volumes after studying papyri from a university in Chicago. She wrote 3 volumes on early Arabic manuscripts. Okay? And she has also contributed to a 4-volume edition of early Arabic literature published in Cambridge. She has stated categorically that the Kufi script actually predated Islam, that the Kufi script was existing before the advent of Muhammad, and there were 2 types of Kufi script. There's the casual style and the formal style. This is written in the formal Kufi script style. Was only called Kufi because it actually came to be used commonly in Kufa in Iraq. That doesn't mean it existed before. So Mr. Smith's procrastinations, okay, although he sounds very academic, and admittedly he sounds very convincing, and he brings very clever arguments, careful scrutiny of this man's arguments actually leave him nowhere to stand on. And all of his arguments have actually been refuted, not by Muslims, but by other Orientalist people who have studied Islam. Okay? So there's no doubt at all that the Quran, and I have quotations here. I just casually opened some books. Okay? And I have quotations here from about 3 or 4 different books which I read from, written by non-Muslims, just to show it's completely impartial. About non-Muslims, about the authenticity of the Quran, that it is, the Quran of Muslims today is the same as that was had in the hands of Muhammad 1,400 years ago. And I'd like to direct you to a man called John B. Taylor. He is the director of dialogue with people of living faiths and ideologies in the world community of churches, and he wrote in his book, Thinking About Islam, he said, thus we can feel confident that the Quran which we have today is as far as is humanly possible the text which was established within a few years of the Prophet's death. Okay? This is a man who is a Christian. Not only is a Christian, he's a Christian missionary involved in dialogue with Muslims. He has to admit that the Quran the Muslims have was without doubt the same text that was established within a few years of the Prophet Muhammad's death. And I have many other quotations here. Okay? We have one, John Bagot Glubb, H.A.R. Gribb, Francesco Gabrielli, okay? And we also, I had a whole list. I have actually a photocopied sheet that I did from my research. But I also have in my here, I have here, by the way, just to reconfirm what I was saying about the, where is it gone? about the manuscript that I was talking about here, the Kufic script. As I mentioned, this is indeed the Kufic script, okay, that John Smith was talking about. You'll find him talking over there in speaker. And I do invite you, by the way, to go and listen to him. And I'd really like some of the people listening to him to come back to me and ask me about the points that he's raised. And I feel that I can confidently answer them, okay? Because actually, if you have any knowledge about history and about archaeology, what the guy is saying actually will make you laugh. But he's very, very convincing in the way he says it. I have to say, he's a very good debater and he's very convincing, but then so's the devil, okay? So here we have a manuscript taken from the British Museum on the front of a Quran printed by, who printed this Quran? Oxford University Press. And on the inlay here, it says, the reproduction of the front of this jacket shows part of the Quran in Kufic script from a manuscript in the British Museum. This script is the most ancient form of calligraphy in which the Quran was originally written. Okay? That's not a Muslim saying it, that's a non-Muslim. Which shows that John Smith knows that very well. Okay? And I have to say here, please don't get offended, okay? But the methodology of the Christian missionary is to lie about Islam. And that's not surprising, because that's what his Bible teaches. Paul in the Bible says, what does it matter if I lie for the greater glory of God? Okay? Paul admitted in the Bible that there is nothing wrong with lying for the so-called greater glory of God. In fact, you can study the methodology of Christian missionaries all over the world today, and it's their methodology to lie and to trick people into following Jesus. That's part of their methodology. So anyway, that's what he believes. So if that's his belief, we have to realize that he doesn't mind standing up there lying, but he does it very convincingly, and he makes a lot of people think that he's got something to say, but in reality, the own non-Muslim scholars have refuted most of the things that this man has been saying. And here, this man who translated the Quran, Arthur J. Arbery, was an expert in the Arabic language. He clearly states in this introduction he writes in the Quran, he clearly states here that there is no doubt at all, I'm not sure I can find it exactly. He says here, apart from certain orthographical, if you know what that means, orthographical modifications of the original somewhat primitive method of writing intended to render unambiguous and easy the task of reading and recitation, the Quran as printed in the 20th century is identical with the Quran as authorized by Uthman more than 1,300 years ago. Of course, he was writing quite a while ago, this man, okay? So this, what I have here, is a photocopy of the Uthmanic Quran, okay, and you can see it here, without the vowel points, because later Qurans, they have vowel points. They have marks in order for you to be able to pronounce the vowels, because there's no vowels in Arabic. The vowels are not written down, you only have the consonants in Arabic. Actually predated Islam, that the Kufi script was existing before the advent of Muhammad, and there were two types of Kufi script. There's the casual style and the formal style. This is written in the formal Kufi script style, was only called Kufi because it actually came to be used commonly in Kufa in Iraq. That doesn't mean it existed before. So Mr. Smith's procrastinations, okay, although he sounds very academic, and admittedly he sounds very convincing, and he brings very clever arguments, careful scrutiny of this man's arguments actually leave him nowhere to stand on. And all of his arguments have actually been refuted, not by Muslims, but by other Orientalist people who have studied Islam, okay? So there's no doubt at all that the Quran, and I have quotations here, I just casually opened some books, okay? And I have quotations here from about 3 or 4 different books which I read from, written by non-Muslims, just to show it's completely impartial. About non-Muslims, about the authenticity of the Quran, that it is, the Quran of Muslims today is the same as that was had in the hands of Muhammad 1,400 years ago. And I'd like to direct you to a man called John B. Taylor. He is the director of dialogue with people of living faiths and ideologies in the world community of churches. And he wrote in his book, Thinking About Islam, he said, thus we can feel confident that the Quran which we have today is as far as is humanly possible the text which was established within a few years of the Prophet's death. Okay? This is a man who is a Christian. Not only is a Christian, he's a Christian missionary involved in dialogue with Muslims. He has to admit that the Quran the Muslims have was without doubt the same text that was established within a few years of the Prophet Muhammad's death. And I have many other quotations here. Okay? We have one, John Bagot Glubb, H.A.R. Gribb, Francesco Gabrielli, okay? And we also, I had a whole list. I have actually a photocopied sheet that I did from my research. But I also have in my here, I have here, by the way, just to reconfirm what I was saying about the, where is it gone? About the manuscript that I was talking about here, the Kufic script. As I mentioned, this is indeed the Kufic script, okay, that John Smith was talking about. You'll find him talking over there in speaker. And I do invite you, by the way, to go and listen to him. And I'd really like some of the people listening to him to come back to me and ask me about the points that he's raised. And I feel that I can confidently answer them, okay? Because actually, if you have any knowledge about history and about archaeology, what the guy is saying actually will make you laugh. But he's very, very convincing in the way he says it. I have to say, he's a very good debater and he's very convincing, but then so's the devil, okay? So here we have a manuscript taken from the British Museum on the front of a Quran printed by, who printed this Quran? Oxford University Press. And on the inlay here, it says, the reproduction of the front of this jacket shows part of the Quran in Kufic script from a manuscript in the British Museum. This script is the most ancient form of calligraphy in which the Quran was originally written. Okay? That's not a Muslim saying it, that's a non-Muslim. Which shows that John Smith knows that very well. Okay? And I have to say here, please don't get offended, okay? But the methodology of the Christian missionary is to lie about Islam. And that's not surprising, because that's what his Bible teaches. Paul in the Bible says, what does it matter if I lie for the greater glory of God? Okay? Paul admitted in the Bible that there is nothing wrong with lying for the so-called greater glory of God. In fact, you can study the methodology of Christian missionaries all over the world today, and it's their methodology to lie and to trick people into following Jesus. That's part of their methodology. So anyway, that's what he believes. So if that's his belief, we have to realize that he doesn't mind standing up there lying, but he does it very convincingly, and he makes a lot of people think that he's got something to say, but in reality, the own non-Muslim scholars have refuted most of the things that this man has been saying. And here, this man who translated the Quran, Arthur J. Arbery, was an expert in the Arabic language. He clearly states in this introduction he writes in the Quran, he clearly states here that there is no doubt at all, if I'm not sure I can find it exactly. He says here, apart from certain orthographical, if you know what that means, orthographical modifications of the original somewhat primitive method of writing intended to render unambiguous and easy the task of reading and recitation, the Quran as printed in the 20th century is identical with the Quran as authorized by Uthman more than 1,300 years ago. Of course, he was writing quite a while ago, this man, okay? So this, what I have here, is a photocopy of the Uthmanic Quran, okay, and you can see it here, without the vowel points, because later Qurans, they have vowel points. They have marks in order for you to be able to pronounce the vowels, because there's no vowels in Arabic. the vowels are not written down. You only have the consonants in Arabic. Okay? Afterwards, when Islam spread very far, people had difficulty in reading the Quran correctly because they weren't familiar with the Arabic language like the pure Arabs were. So they started putting vowel marks. If someone's got the Quran, we can show. Anyway, so that's what Arbery says quite clearly, that this Quran is identical. So Muslims and non-Muslims need to have no doubt that the book that I'm holding in the book I'm holding in my hand, the Quran that I have, is identical to the Quran that was revealed to Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam 1,400 years ago. As far as is humanly possible for any book to be proven authentic, the Quran can be proven authentic. Okay? This is my argument. There are many other arguments as well, by the way, to prove that the Tashkent copy is in fact the Uthmanic copy, the one ordered to be written by Uthman, who ordered the scribe of Prophet Muhammad, whose name was Zayd ibn Thabit. He ordered him to compile an absolutely authoritative collection of all the verses of Quran. He did this and he had it authenticated, he had it confirmed by over 50 of the living memorizers of the Quran. And by the way, another amazing thing about the Quran is, and also to say that, by the way, just because something is written down, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's authentic. In fact, many of the early Muslim scholars had serious doubts about the efficiency of written material, and they actually believed that things that were memorized could be proved more authentic, okay, than those things which were not. Now, Mr. Smith over there, Joseph Smith, he's gone now, but if you listen to him, he might talk about the unreliability of transmitted verbal information. And he'll give you the old thing, we all know about it, Chinese whispers, yeah? So if I start saying something here, it gets past whispered, and by the time it gets back to me, it will be changed. Now we all know that's the truth, okay? There's no doubt about that. However, that's not necessarily the case. First of all, in the case of the transmission of the sayings and the deeds of the Prophet Muhammad, it wasn't Chinese whispers, okay? They weren't playing a game. They were talking about the revelation which God, the creator of the heavens and the earth, revealed to the benefit of all of mankind. Secondly, I was thinking about this issue and I remembered my father. My father always used to teach me something. He used to say to me, Anthony, that used to be my name before I became a Muslim. He used to say to me, Anthony, R-A-U. Always remember, R-A-U. Return after use. Huh? You see, you pick something up and you put it down somewhere else. And then they'll be shouting, where's it gone? Where's my thingamajig? Where's my whatever? And you'd find it somewhere else. My father would say, R-A-U. As my father always, and he would say, my father taught me this. So my grandfather, who I never saw my grandfather. But from my grandfather, to my father, to me, and now to my son, through generations, simple instruction is passed on, R-A-U. Now what you find is that most of the sayings of the Prophet Muhammad are simple instructions. And what's more, you find them manifested practically, consistently in the daily lives of people. You understand? There's a difference between what you whisper, some stupid thing, and you whisper it round, okay, and it comes down as giggle, okay? It doesn't mean anything. But when you're practically manifesting something in your life, every day in my life, my father's saying, R-A-U. Remember, do that in your life, R-A-U. You see, it's different. It becomes part of your habit. And you remember, oh yes, that's what my grandfather taught my father. And I taught it to my son. And it's manifested practically in your life. You see, that's the same with most of the traditions of Muhammad. How to pray, how to fast, how to be kind to your parents, what to do here, what to do there. It's not just something they told and, oh, that's interesting, let me file that away in my mind. It's something they learned and they manifested it. And when they were acting, they remembered it in their life and passed it on. You see? So it's not like these people make out. And in fact, oral transmission in such a situation is not at all unreliable. In fact, when you add to that the type of intensity the Muslim scholars used to go in order to make sure that these sayings of the Prophet Muhammad were authenticated, that they weren't invented, that they weren't corrupted, they would demand, who did you hear this from? And they would have to examine the character of this man. Is he truthful? Is he known to be pious and religious? Has he got a good memory? Meaning maybe he forgot maybe his mind slipped. And the other thing we have to remember is in those days, okay, people had much better memories than we. They didn't have writing like we do. They didn't have video recorders. They didn't have tape recorders to put everything down. They used to remember things. They used to remember things. And the other thing we find is until this day, you will find little children of 8 years old who can memorize the Quran in Arabic from beginning to end. And the Quran was memorized by so many Muslims. How is it possible, as this man Joseph Smith claims, okay, that the Quran, now think about this. Think about this man, what he's saying is so laughable. It's so laughable. The reason why people don't bother asking this man's questions is because anyone who knows anything will think it's not even worth replying to this nonsense. It's so absurd. But he does make it sound convincing. But now imagine the scenario Joseph Smith is painting. He's painting a scenario that in fact the Quran was only introduced 150 years after Muhammad. Now imagine this. These Arabs, okay, if you only look at them 50 years ago, as they are Muslims, okay, but having deserted Islam, you see how they're fighting each other. Look at them now. Saddam Hussein fighting Saudi Arabia. Look at these people fighting and quarreling. It's like it's in their blood. Okay, they're Bedouins. It's their nature. And before Islam, they were idol worshippers. Each one worshipped his own idol. Each one, as this man Joseph Smith admitted himself, they would set up an idol in a town in order to make it a center of influence. He said that himself. Yet he's suggesting that all these Arabs, okay, with all their different idols, fighting and quarreling each other, without any unifying force, without any single religion, managed to defeat the Persian and Roman empires. And then this man Hajjaj, who he claims introduced the Quran 150 years after the Muhammad, managed to impose this religion upon all these idol worshippers. Without any quarrel, without any complaint, with not one single word of, oh no, we're not going to give up our idols for this Quran. Nothing. Suddenly, miraculously, this man Hajjaj, of whom the Muslim scholars were actually, some of them were fighting him, the people who had memorized, it's so ridiculous. If you study Muslim history, you will laugh. But of course, most of the people are ignorant. They don't know. So people like Mr. Smith come along and they use a few snazzy words and they quote a few exotic sounding locations, and they talk about a few tablets here and there and a few inscriptions here and there. You go, oh, the Muslim faith has now been challenged. But any Muslim who has any knowledge is just laughing inside this saying, this is so ridiculous. So really, we find that we have so much proof and so much evidence to support the fact that the Quran the Muslims have is exactly the same. Isn't it enough that you can pick up a Quran in Central Mosque and you can go to China and pick up a Quran there? Then I challenge you, go to South America and pick up a Quran there. Then go to Siberia now. There's a whole lot of Eskimos, half of them apparently become Muslim. You know why? Because the Russian government, the Soviet Republic, when they wanted to conquer all these Muslim things, Tajikistan and Bukhara and stuff, the first thing they do is they arrest all the Muslim scholars. And they sent them off to Siberia. And the Muslim scholars ended up converting half the Eskimos. Okay? So now they have a huge Muslim Eskimo population. Go to Siberia, I can give you the address, I know the organization that's helping build mosques out there, and pick up a Quran from there. Everywhere you go in the Muslim world, and bring them all together. Bring them all together. And you will find word for word, letter for letter, they are exactly the same. In fact, you can go to any of these places, ask where is the Huffaz, where's the someone, the Hafid, where's the one who's memorized the Quran, and bring them all together, and they'll recite the Quran in the same accent. And this is the same accent that was recited by Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam 1,400 years ago. And a lot of these people don't even speak Arabic. That's enough. Isn't that enough for you? How did the Quran, this one Quran, become established so unanimously across the whole face of the Muslim world without a single complaint from anybody? No one complaining, oh, well, this verse is not there and that verse is not there. If Hajjaj bin Yusuf, 150 years after Muhammad, suddenly sort of introduced the Quran like Joseph Smith claims, if he suddenly introduced it, surely you will find his opponents, like Abdullah ibn Zubayr, who was fighting him, bring his own version of the Quran to say, no, 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 God said this, supporting me. And then some other people will be saying, no, 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 no. Hajjaj bin Yusuf's Quran is not the right one. I've got the real one, and here's some things saying I'm right. Follow me. But no one ever did that. And if Hajjaj bin Yusuf could invent the Quran, how come no one can invent it? If he can do it, any man can do it. But the Quran, the language of the Quran, has proved inimitable. No one has been able to imitate it. No one has been able to produce one verse like it. Even the most intellectual and the greatest of the Arabic philosophers, they've tried. And the intelligent ones, they broke their pens and they gave up. They said, we can't do it. It's impossible. And only the fools amongst them, like Musaylimah the liar, he tried to bring his own Quran. And like the Qadiani imposter, Ghulam Ahmed, okay, from Pakistan, he tried to bring his own Quran. Anybody who knows Arabic, who will hear this and laugh, okay? They will just laugh. You see, people, so the reality is that we find the methodology of the Christian missionary is to lie. And I just want to give you an example from the same man down here. You'll see him every Sunday probably, Joseph Smith. I'll give you an example of his lies. Okay? If I can find it. Has anyone got one of his leaflets? The African, I saw someone with the African leaflet there. They ask serious questions to Afro-Caribbean. Come on, someone's got it. Come on, Rashid. Who's got it? I'm sure I put it here somewhere. Okay, wait a minute. So they produced this leaflet, and this leaflet is called 99 Truth Tracks. 99 Truth Tracks, okay? It should be called 99 Lie Tracks, okay? Because that's what it is. Fortunately, I don't seem to have it.
Maybe has.
Okay, it doesn't matter anyway. If you pick up this leaflet of his, you'll find in this leaflet 99 Truth Tracks. There's one about Africa. It's called A Christian Asks African Muslim something something. And in it he says, right? He says that the Quran is racist and anti-black. And you know what he uses as a proof? He says, on the day of judgment, their faces will be blackened. He says, look. He says, the Quran has something against black people. Now let me ask you a question, right? If I take a white man, and I stick him in a fire, and he comes out, what color is he going to be? He's going to be blackened. And first of all, you see, he's messing around with the English language. You see, you call them blacks. But blacks aren't black, they're brown. Okay? It's not actually black. It's actually brown and dark brown. Okay? And the thing is that this man is so perverted. Okay? He knows he's a liar. He knows it. He knows the Prophet Muhammad said there is no difference between the dark person, the black person, and the white person. There is no difference between the Arab and the non-Arab except in piety. That's what the Prophet Muhammad said. He knows the Quran also says, that we made you, God, Allah, made you into tribes and nations in order that you may get to know one another, not that you may despise one another. He knows that's in the Quran, but he's a Christian and he's a liar. And it's the methodology of the Christian missionary to lie. So here's 99 truth tracks. Examine most of them. They're 99 bull tracks. That's what they are. Okay? So I wish I had it with me so I could read it out. And you'll see more of them coming out. Twisting and turning and perverting. You know the biggest joke of all? When Joseph Smith in his debates, okay, was asked, or rather he asked himself, he wasn't asked, he asked himself. When Joseph Smith was asked about the Bible, Abdurraheem, why are you always doing this to me? Why is he always doing this to me?
He's always there.
Abdurraheem! Can you get him? Every week you do this to me, yeah. Every week you do it to me. Why don't you take the Yehudi over there, far away, okay? So his stench doesn't disturb us, okay?
That's right.
And then you can go and talk to him over there.
Yeah. Take him away.
Get up.
Shut up.
See, and then Joseph Smith, he went on to say, right, that know the Bible is authentic. Oh yeah, here's the leaflet. An African asks some disturbing questions of Islam. You know, these Christians are so desperate to insult Islam, they insult themselves. They insult their own book. You see, he's talking about slavery in Islam. First of all, slavery in Islam has never been a race issue. I don't deny there's slavery in Islam. I wouldn't be a Muslim if I did. But it's not a race issue. Islam doesn't say enslave the niggers, okay, because they're inferior to us. We found actually that the black Saracens were enslaving the Europeans. That's the reality. So slavery in Islam is not a race issue like this man makes it out to be. It was never a race issue. And the other thing we'd like to unfortunately point out to him, that he's complaining about how Islam went sword in hand, converting people with a sword swinging, become Muslim. You know, here it's talking about how the Muslims, he says, fight and slay those who, he says, fight and slay and seize them, beleaguer them, and lie in wait for them in every strategy of war. And so he's saying how the Muslims make war on those who make war upon Allah and His Messenger and strive after corruption in the land. What's wrong with that? Striving after corruption in the land. I'm glad he's admitting Christians make corruption in the land. Okay, will be that they will be killed or crucified or have their hands and feet. You see, look at him. Now this man knows Joseph Smith. He knows tafsir. He knows explanation. He's got a master's degree in Islamic studies. And look at him. He can't resist lying. He wants to take this verse out of context. He thinks it's talking about killing every non-Muslim and crucifying them. But that's not what it means. This verse about crucifixion, okay, and about chopping hands and feet off is for armed robbery. It's for armed robbery. And in fact, the people who it was done to, they were Muslims. The people whom this verse was implemented on were Muslims. Okay? The other thing is that in Ethiopia, this Christian country that he's talking about, the king of Ethiopia, Negus of Abyssinia, in the time of Prophet Muhammad, along with most of the nobility and most of the bishops, embraced Islam. And there was no Muslim army ever went to Ethiopia. The Ethiopians, a lot of them, most of them you find today, they embraced Islam in the time of the Prophet Muhammad, when his companions went over there seeking refuge there. So there was no Islam being, and the other thing is, Islam says, let there be, it's in the Quran. You see, now again, you'll find the Christian lying, quoting things out of context. He knows the Quran says, let there be no compulsion in religion. Truth stands out clear from error. He knows that verse in the Quran, yet he's trying to make out that the Muslims compelled Christians in Africa to accept Islam. They didn't compel them. The Christians realized that Islam is the truth, and willingly, like they are today, I think they did an estimate about 5 or 10 years ago, in 1 year, 10 million Africans embraced Islam. Now I want to ask you a question, right? 10 million Africans embracing Islam every year. What Muslim army is in Africa today, forcing them to become Muslims? What Muslim army is in Africa today, forcing them to become Muslims? There isn't one. They're embracing Islam today as they did in the past because they know that it is the truth and that the Quran is from Allah and that Muhammad is His messenger. And they know that Muhammad is the messenger and they recognize him and his description in their own books. This is why. This is why they're becoming Muslim. So we find this man, they can't resist lying, the Christians. You know why they have to lie? It's not like Joseph Smith says that the Orientalists, they keep on producing arguments against Islam because they know that Islam is not authentic. It's not like that at all. You find that the Orientalists, they keep having to lie against Islam because they can't find a decent argument. That's the reality. And you're telling me what? These people living in the 18th century, when England was ruling India, and the people who were giving the most trouble were the Muslims fighting jihad against them. They were looking honestly and sincerely as to whether the Quran was the truth or not. No, that's not the way it went. And until this day, it's not the way it goes. They say Muslims, Islam, fundamentalism on your TV, your newspaper. But they know that's not Islam, people. They know that's just, what is that? Because they found so many mistakes in the Quran? No. They're lying on purpose because they're protecting their selfish interests. This is the reality of the situation. And these Orientalists, I tell you, every single argument Joseph Smith's brought, his arguments have already been refuted by other non-Muslim Orientalists. And I point in case Nadia Abbott. She is not a Muslim, okay? And she has written extensively, showing categorically and clearly stating the reliability both of the Quran and of the prophetic Sunnah, the statements that are attributed to the Prophet Muhammad that have been thoroughly researched by the Muslim scholars. Now what's the joke after all? Joseph Smith in his debate with our dearly beloved Jamal Badawi, who I have to admit was a bit, I wouldn't say he was defeated, but they were talking in different levels. Joseph Smith was coming with his academic what's what, and Jamal Badawi was a very polite man. I wouldn't call him the top Muslim scholar, hardly. Okay, like Joseph Smith likes to say, the top Muslim man. He's not the top Muslim man. I'm sorry, that's just not true. That's exaggerating. Okay? Okay? But Jamal Badawi, you see, he claimed in this debate that he recently had that we even know the names of the early people who wrote, you know, our Bible. It's absolute rubbish. Every single early document of the Bible, okay, and I have here with me a book. Not written by Muslims. Not written by Muslims. Here is a book written. See, you know, I don't need to preach against Christianity. There it is. That's Christianity. Huh? Now we have a book here. This book was written by a group of people called the Jesus Seminar. The man who wrote it, Robert W. Funk and Roy W. Hoover, they actually, and the Jesus Seminar is, I can't remember exactly, but it's a 30 to 40 and even a wider group of 50 biblical scholars, non-Muslim Christian scholars gathering together to find out and estimate what did Jesus really say. First of all, in the introduction of this book, he says that we have the earliest complete biblical manuscript that we have is dated 325 years after Jesus. It's the Codex Sinaiticus. You find it in the British Museum. It actually has an extra gospel, the gospel according to the Shepherd Hermas. It has serious differences from what you call your modern day Bible. But the oldest complete biblical document is 325. The oldest sizable manuscripts actually date to 200 years after Jesus. Now I admit that the Muslims also, we have manuscripts, okay, and most of the sayings of the Prophet Muhammad were not written until about 200 years after. But there's a big difference. First of all, remember, Christianity was a small cult, constantly being threatened, constantly being attacked by the Roman authorities. Islam, however, in a very short time became a world empire, okay? So we can see how the authenticity of Christian manuscripts must be much more questionable, very questionable. Matthew, Mark, the so-called Matthew, Mark, Luke and John, the four Gospelers, according to the Jesus Seminar, right? They say that Matthew, Mark, Luke and John, here it is. It's written right here. All the Gospels originally circulated anonymously. All the Gospels originally circulated anonymously. Authoritative names were later assigned to them by unknown figures in the early church. In most cases, the names are guesses or perhaps the result of pious wishes. This is what the Jesus Seminar, but Joseph Smith stated so boldly in his debate that we know the names, even the names, he said, even the names we know. Like it was really amazing. We actually know the names of the people who wrote the Gospels. Even the names, he said. Yet when we Muslims say that we know not only the names of the people who recited the traditions, but also the name of every single person who transmitted that tradition back to the Prophet Muhammad, you know what he says? Oh, it's just a list of names. Just a list list of names. But when it comes to the Bible, we even know the names of the 4 Gospels. You see, there's double standards going on here. Double standards going on, you know. But in fact, he doesn't. He doesn't know the names of the 4 Gospels, and I challenge him right here. Pass it on to him. Bring your proof. Bring your proof of the names. If you even want to know who wrote Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, bring me your proof. Huh? We'll go on. We'll read a little bit more here. Or before I surprise you with the real surprise, the real icing on the cake. Huh? We'll finish off with telling you something about this lovely book here, written by the... Oh, have you noticed, by the way, the 5 Gospels? The 5 Gospels? You thought there was 4, didn't you? Huh? Not according to the Jesus Seminar. Now here they said, right? Mark. The suggestion that the Gospel was written by Mark was first made by Papias, 130 years after Jesus. As reported by Eusebius, who lived 325 years after Jesus. Now I asked Joseph Smith to even bring to us the document where Papias said that this gospel according to Mark was written by Mark. He hasn't got it. But he says we Muslims, we have to produce original documents. We have to, he says. Yet he claims he knows their names, but he only knows the names through someone who claimed that he wrote it. He heard Papaya. How did a man living 325 years after Jesus said that a man 130 years after Jesus said this gospel was written by Mark? Huh? What's the proof? So the only information, the first real information, he goes on to say, in this, as in the other matters, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, the others as well, Papias is unreliable because he is interested in the guarantees of an eyewitnesses rather than in the oral process that produced Mark. And you know what's interesting here is while Joseph Smith is attacking the oral preservation of the sayings of the Prophet Muhammad in the Quran, he's attacking the methodology used by the Muslims. The Jesus Seminar is actually saying that Christianity needs some authoritative form of proving oral tradition. Huh? Amazing. You see the double standards of these Christians? You see the double standards? That's very sad. That's very sad that you have to lie. That's very sad that you won't apply the same standards to the Quran as you apply to your book. Huh? I really honestly say, okay, whenever I attack the Bible, I attack the Bible on standards that I would expect the Quran to be attacked upon. Huh? I won't make ridicule of something in the Bible that's in the Quran. How could I? Yet this man is ridiculing the Quran, but you'll find the same things in the Bible. We mentioned slavery. Slavery is approved of in the Bible. Yet this man, Joseph Smith, in his pamphlet, asking Muslim Africans to ask serious questions about Islam, he attacks slavery. Yet Paul in the Bible allows slavery. There's no condemnation of slavery in the Bible. So if he's attacking slavery in the Quran, why doesn't he attack it in the Bible as well? Huh? Because the man is so desperate to find an argument, he has to lie, and he has to even lie against his own book and make fun of his own book. Now, just to put the icing on the cake, we talk about the Jesus Seminar. Huh? The 5 Gospels. What did Jesus really say? What they did here in this lovely book, okay, is they divided the sayings of Jesus, and here's an example: black, red, grey, and they also have pink. Black means they think that Jesus definitely didn't say it. Grey means this is something that we're almost certain Jesus didn't say. Red means Jesus almost definitely said it. And pink means Jesus probably said something like it. Oh dear. Oh dear. You know what? 70% of the words of Jesus are in black. The Jesus Seminar believe that 70% of the words attributed to Jesus, they believe he never ever said them. But Mr. Smith, I know my Bible is the truth. I know it's been proven, and until today it's still being proven that it's authentic. His teacher in SOAS, was a teacher of Arabic. His teacher in the School of Africa, oh, I gave up looking at the Bible because I didn't, there's no point anymore. Everything's been said about it. Yeah, there's so many mistakes in it. What's the point? But he claimed, no, because why? He said his teacher was claiming how authentic the Bible was. But Joseph Smith himself says, no, we need to go to the experts. Well, who could be more expert than the Jesus seminar? 70% of the words of Jesus, they think he didn't really say it. You know the next book that's coming out? What did Jesus really do? I can't wait. Assalamu alaikum. May God guide you in Islam.